ahead and jump back to your resource pack directory, and let's go ahead and open up the fourth step, which is called first peach rewrite.step. Go ahead and copy all of the code and paste it over the code that's currently in your test.php file and save it. Now let's go ahead and experience this script first, and then we'll take a look at the code that produces it. I'm going to jump to the browser and I'm going to refresh the test.php page. And I'm just going to refresh it a few times. So it says, this peach is super good. Now it says, this peach is very bad. Now it says, this peach is not good. And so on. We can keep refreshing it and we'll get some different elements of randomness here. So notice that the things that are changing is the adjective here, the adverb here, and the punctuation. And for certain types of punctuation, something else will happen. So when there's an exclamation mark, it will capitalize everything. So this script adds a bit more interest, there's more randomness happening, and some of the phrases that it comes up with are a bit more funny than our previous example. Now, one thing I want to remind you of at this point is that even though this doesn't seem like a very practical example, if it entices you in any way, if it seems fun, if you find yourself tweaking it a little bit to add some additional elements of randomness or just to make it more interesting, that's the way that you're going to get better. And any techniques that you develop or hone or practice in the process of working with the script, even though it seems a little purposeless, I guarantee will have practical value later on. So again, this is a reminder that it's really important to play with this. Just have fun with it. If you can think of some way to extend this script now with what you know, go ahead and stop and play with it for a while because you'll get a lot more out of it that way. Okay, but for now, what I'm going to do is go back to the script and we'll walk through the code. So I'm going to jump back to the editor here, and let's go ahead and start at the top, just like PHP would. So this first line looks pretty familiar. What we're doing is creating an array of adjectives, and we're passing it good, bad, or ugly as potential adjectives. But then what we're doing is selecting an adjective by using nested functions here. So when you start to see this, where there's a function being used on a function, it can get a little confusing, especially if there's several of them. Once you get to 5 or 6 functions nested inside of other functions, it gets a little hard to read. So what you want to do is go to the very center of what's being used here, and then work your way out. So at the very center, we have our adjective array. Right outside of this, we have a function called arrayFlip. Now in our previous script, we use a function called arrayrand in order to return a particular key. And then, in order to pull out the actual adjective, we had to pass that key to the adjective array, and then that would return the value of one of these items. What arrayFlip does is it takes the key and the value and it flips them. So now the value is the key and the key is the value. So that means that when we use arrayrand, we're going to get the value of the original array instead of the key. So this will return either good, bad, or ugly. If that doesn't make any sense to you, then go ahead and pull out this code arrayFlip adjective array and do a var dump on it after it gets flipped, and you'll see what I mean. So at the end of these 2 lines, we'll have a random adjective that we can work with. Next, what we're going to do is do the exact same thing for our adverb and for our punctuation. We're going to create an array of potential adverbs here, and then we're going to select a random one by taking that array, flipping the keys and the indexes, and then selecting a random value and assigning it to adverb in this case. We're going to do the same thing with punctuation, and you see we have 4 different punctuation types here. And so at this point, we have a random adjective, a random adverb, and some random punctuation. Our final step is pulling it all together into a string. So we're assigning the new variable output the value this peach is, and then we're passing it adverb. We're adding a space, so we have a space between the adverb and the adjective, and then we're adding some punctuation at the end. And that yell functionality from our previous script was kind of cool. And so what we're going to do here, instead of just randomly selecting when we're going to yell, is only yelling if the punctuation is an exclamation mark. So it should happen about 1/4 of the time. And so if the punctuation is an exclamation mark, then we're going to take the output, run it through string to upper, which will make everything uppercase, like a yell, and assign it back to the output variable. Finally, we're going to print the output to the screen. So something interesting you might notice about this script is that there's some repetition happening. So this first line, we have an array of items, and then we're going to array flip it and pick a random element. This next one, we have an array of items, and we're going to array flip it and pick a random element with array rand, and so on. We do this 3 times. So whenever you start to see this kind of repetition, it's a good indicator that we can rewrite the code in such a way that we actually remove the duplication. Even though there's elements that are a little bit different for each one of these lines, there's a lot that's in common. So you'll start to see this pattern as we work through more and more complex scripts, where you see some type of logic or approach being taken over and over again. And again, that's usually a sign that we can be doing something differently that reduces repetition in our code. So we're going to come back to this idea of reducing repetition after we've learned a couple additional logical tools that will help us to do that.